Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Neill, joined today by the Echo's Everton FC correspondent, Joe Thomas. Joe, we've not recorded the podcast for over a week, but it's safe to say a lot has happened in that time, and much to our delight, it's 3 wins on the bounce for the Blues.
Yeah, it certainly has happened. I mean, that's what happens when some of your key personnel decide to take holidays at the busiest time of the year, isn't it? So
let's just put on record, though, not me and you.
Not me and you, no. So we've been busy and we've been able to enjoy most of it, haven't we? I mean, three wins on the bounce, and that really was something up at Wolves the other day. That really was a kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a glimpse and insight as to what this season could hold, both good and bad, I think. But yeah, when Everton going forward, I mean, I don't think I've seen an Everton. I mean, I've been doing this job for 3.5 years, and I haven't seen an Everton attacking performance like that. There have been some good days in that 3.5 years, and there have been some positive attacking moments, but I haven't seen an Everton side play with that kind of a amount of technical proficiency and attacking intelligence, and just the retention of the ball in key areas around the box. It really was a joy to watch.
It is 2:00 on transfer deadline day as we record this podcast. So we will touch on transfer deadline day and incomings, outgoings, etc. a bit later on, and also look at Wolves. But it would be wrong of us not to go back to the very, very start of this run that Everton are currently on, and the game against Brighton Hove Albion at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. It was a, I could say, historic afternoon for all involved with the football club, and Everton got off to a winning start. Obviously, it's the first time we've recorded since that game. Joe, I don't know about you, but memories that last a lifetime, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to dwell too much on that, because let's be honest, most of our listeners have had a week to process that and move on beyond that, haven't we? But yeah, I mean, that was a fantastic day. Look, I think Everton rode their luck, to be perfectly honest. It was brilliant to see Jack Grealish hit the form that he did, and obviously Ilman die as well. But Brighton had some big chances in that game. It just felt like it was kind of written in the stars for Everton to win that, I think. And it was just nice, because I think that so often we've seen things tend to go wrong for Everton over recent years, and this was just, it didn't make all the struggle and everything of the last few seasons worth it, but it was just nice that every time Everton have had something nice or been on the cusp of progress over the last 3 or 4 years, there's always been a caveat, there's always been an asterisk attached, there's always been, oh, you've won this game, but this is coming down the line, or you've reached this milestone at a new stadium, but you've got bigger things to worry about, and things like that. This was the first time in a long time it's felt that there'd just been something that was just kind of unbridled, unmitigated positivity, and that was that. So I was pleased that they did it. Like I say, they both before and after the opening goal in the first half, Brighton caused some big chances, and I think that had the penalty gone in late on, then I think that could have been a tricky ending. But it was a great response to the Leeds defeat, and it was nice that whilst we were in some very new surroundings, it was actually some kind of old favourites that shone. I think obviously Jordan Pickford saving the penalty and Ilman Ndiaye getting the goal. That was nice to see as well, I think. So that was good. And obviously we had Mansfield in the week as well. And I spoke to David Moyes after that game, and he was happy with the performance. He was happy with the first half. I think he was right to be, because those games can be tricky. I was a little bit nervous at the break. Everton had dominated for 40 odd minutes, hadn't got the goal, and they just had that little passage of play before half time where they'd grown in confidence, when you thought, this could be a tricky second half if we're not careful. Then Carlos Alcaraz pops up. It's a different story for Armstrong. We'll get onto him and where he's going very soon. But I thought he was excellent in that game. I thought he made a relatively compelling case for him to stay around the squad. But I think it only makes sense to keep him around the squad if you can give him proper minutes, and for reasons that we'll get on to, he might not be able to do that this season.
Just very quickly on Mansfield, because I thought there was 2 striking things from that night. I know David Moyes made changes, but it was still an incredibly strong team, and I think he's been quite clear. I think that the cup competitions are something he's going to take very seriously, especially having experienced the cup win with West Ham himself, obviously the Conference League, and having seen Newcastle and Crystal Palace last season win domestic trophies. And the other thing is Seamus Coleman leading out Everton for the first time at Hill Dickinson Stadium. Obviously, a real kind of nice moment for him, given everything that he's done for the football club since he arrived, and the leader that he is. And I think it's safe to say he's a bit of the glue in the dressing room that has held things together in recent years when it has been tough. But they were 2 really nice moments, I thought, on Wednesday, and kind of again, just adds to the occasion and adds to kind of the week that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think there's real potential for Everton in the Cups this season. Look, I think that the main ambition, and Moyes wrote this in his programme notes, was to climb up the Premier League table, and that will take work. There'll be a roller coaster ride, I think, this season. But I do think the highs will be higher than anything that we've had in the last few years. There'll just be a bit of patience required, because I think there'll be a few kind of challenging moments because trying to do so much transition at once. But I do think that there's an opportunity in the Cups, and you only have to look at the League Cup this season already. Well, already Man United are out, and they might not be the type of team that inspired a fear that they once did in you, but that's a team that could beat Everton on their day that are gone. And we've seen a couple of other Premier League clubs also go out in the early stage in the second round as well.
Yeah, Leeds, one of them.
Leeds being one of them. And then I also think that did Bournemouth go out? I can't remember. I'm not sure if Bournemouth went out.
West Ham did, didn't they? They were beating Wolves.
So a few of those clubs where it could get tricky. I think the draw was a lot easier against Wolves away now, having gone to Molineux and beaten them. And not because Everton have got a template for beating them, but because I think that what happens now is Everton have kind of sent a message there where it's like, well, Everton look like they might have a team that isn't going to be involved in a relegation battle this season, and Wolves, having had the start of the season that they now have had, you can understand why they'll very quickly have to prioritise the league. All of a sudden, because of those results, because of where the teams respectively sit in the league, that game becomes a pain in the backside for Wolves, and it becomes an opportunity for Everton. And I hope that when we get round to that in a couple of weeks' time, Moyes sees it that way, because you get through that round. I mean, the draw is a farce. We've seen that with the way that those clubs that are in Europe have been given a degree of protection in this round. It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It gives them an advantage that I think is unnecessary and unfair. But if the draw if Everton can get past Wolves and then get a little bit above the draw, there really isn't, especially when you think about what they did at Wolves and the way that some of those players are playing together. If Everton have the freedom to make the Cup something that they can enjoy this season, there's absolutely no reason why they can't go deep in those competitions. Need a little bit of luck, but if they can get that, then I don't think it's unreasonable to believe that Everton can make some far more substantial progress than they have done in recent years for a long time.
You just used the word roller coaster, and I think that sums up perfectly Saturday afternoon, because it was a win, a big win, if we're being honest, because obviously, getting into the habit of winning football matches is something we wanted Everton to do for a long time. But in true Everton style, they've done it the hard way. It's never easy. And a much deserved 3 points, but half fought at the same time.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing, it was an excellent 3 points. I thought it was a very good performance. I think the best thing about that match in the end was my biggest takeaway for positivity is whilst that became a very difficult match, it wasn't made difficult by Wolves. It was made difficult by Everton making mistakes. They were far the better side. They came out, they played with a degree of aggression and authority. They look so comfortable on the ball. It's so unusual to watch an Everton side be willing to just hold on to the ball for a sustained period of time and not panic with it on the edge of the box. To see the likes of Jack Grealish and Dewsbury Hall and Ndai just be able to pop balls between each other and just not panic, just take a step back or turn back and find a teammate rather than just lash it across the face of goal or have an ambitious effort if things go wrong. To see an Everton side get players up into the final third and support them when they've got the ball, it was just phenomenal. They got the goal, they deserved it. And then they just, that first 20 minutes or so, it was almost at the perfect first 20 minutes. And then for some reason, I'm not quite sure what it was, just as the home fans are getting on the backs of the Wolves players, there's just a few sloppy periods of play. I should play. Jacob Bryan gave the ball away on the halfway line. It gave Wolves a good chance to get forward, which they didn't take. But all of a sudden, they used that as a stepping stone, started to build momentum. They got the goal, which again wasn't the best defending. And then all of a sudden, one each, Wolves were back in the game. They hadn't deserved to be there. The whole stadium behind them. Got Vita Pereira trying to G up the fans. You got big tackles being made in the middle and the players trying to celebrate them. And all of a sudden, it turned the game into a battle that Everton didn't need to be part of. Now, because Everton have got this quality that we haven't seen in a few years, they're able to get back on top. Got the second goal, brilliant goal. Really so satisfying to see. And almost as much as the link-up play between Grealish and Dewsbury Hall was a delight for that goal. Almost my favourite bit was about 30 seconds earlier when Dewsbury Hall plays a brilliant through ball onto Grealish, send him through one-on-one, and Jose Sarr saved that effort. It was just it's just so nice to see that. Just so nice to see. I also think as well that when you've got players that are that good technically going forward, all of a sudden it changes the workload, changes the complexion of the game for Beto. Beto is a player, and it will be the same for Barry, but Beto is a player that, he gets a lot of criticism for his hold-up play. But, I mean, when you look at, he gets a lot of criticism for what he does with the back to goal. But when you look at so much of what he has to do, a bit like Calvert-Lewin last season, so much of it has been having to deal with long balls, high balls, when he's isolated, outnumbered by defenders. It's just only so much he can do. Well, all of a sudden, when you've got players around him like that, he can just concentrate on being on the box, being in the box, or being around the box, making a nuisance of himself. For the second goal, he won a free kick, about 40 yards from goal from their centre-back, which sparked the movement. It's just a bit of clever play. And if you look at the second goal as well, obviously he doesn't get on the end of it, but as Keenan Dewsbury-Hall plays the ball across the box, he managed to get in the way of a defender to allow the ball to run through to Ndiaye. So when you think of his header for the first goal and that for the second goal, I mean, there's a big contributions. And I think that's really what Everton just need from a striker this season, or from both their strikers. When you look at that supporting cast, there are going to be so many, there's a potential for so many tap-ins. So many. Like we've already seen Idrissa Gueye at the back, Ndiaye at the back post against Brighton, and then the first 2 goals the other day. They just need someone that can just be in and around the box, kind of making a nuisance of himself, and that should be perfect for Beto. And he will have 6 or 7 goals like that this season if he can just make sure he's in the right position.
Now we've got to talk about him, because I think a lot of football fans, Everton fans, are committing the cardinal sin of falling in love with a lone player. Mr. Jack Grealish, you've been very fortunate. I think it's safe to say to watch every minute of his Everton career so far. Probably you and a couple of hardcore Evertonians who've made the trips to Leeds and Wolves. He's just getting better and better, isn't he? David Moyes said after Saturday that he didn't realise quite how good Jack Grealish was. I think we saw signs against Brighton of his ability, signs in midweek against Mansfield. But on Saturday, it just felt like he took things to a new level, and he looked 2-3 steps ahead of everyone on the pitch.
He's just a different level to anything that Everton have had in a long time. And even now, because it's not just Everton have got Grealish, it's in Dewsbury-Hall around him, and hopefully Tyler Diblin, and obviously in Illiman and Ndiaye. They've got players that can have a degree of football and intelligence that can kind of react with him, so he's not having to do everything by himself. But it's just the patience that he's got on the ball. It's almost like the game's played in slow motion when he's got it, and it isn't attacking wise. It's brilliant. And I love the fact that he chose to dink that ball to Keenan Dewsbury-Hall for the third, rather than try and play it on the floor. It gave Dewsbury-Hall the opportunity to wrap his foot around and hit that volley as he did. And I was in the press box, and I just I genuinely shouted out loud, "Oh my God!" when I saw that hit, kiss the bar. It was just wow. He looks fantastic. It was great seeing him in the away end at the end of the match as well. Get the impression he's really enjoying that. But I say it's not just the attacking thing. It's just like he's working hard defensively. He's tracking back. He knows how to take the sting of the game, how to win a clever free kick. How often have we both in winning free kicks and conceding free kicks? I think one of the real frustrations over this Everton side over recent years has been just a complete lack of ability to kind of play the game.
Yeah, I call it intelligence.
Yeah, how often have Everton let a player run through the centre midfield rather than just take the yellow card with a quick free kick? And how often have they stayed on their feet when they could have gone down to win? In the opposite situation, there was a moment in the first half when Wolves were trying to get on top, and I think Andre, who's one of the few players at Wolves who you would cover to Everton. I think, they were getting a little bit frustrated, and he just held onto the ball for 15 seconds going backwards, and Andre just kept pushing him, until eventually he had enough and just hacked him down. Just couldn't get anywhere near the ball, and it's just so clever. But he really does look great. But obviously you need to team around him, and then in the second half, for all you have all that attacking ingenuity in that side now, but there's still a few big errors at the back, big issues at the back. Mikalenko, the way he switched off for that second goal was inexcusable, really. I don't like to be too critical of players, but Everton was so on top, and that had the potential to be such a comfortable finish of the game. To let his man get across him in the way that he did was unforgivable, and then that made it a difficult end. And when he took Idrissa Gueye off with 15 minutes ago, I asked him about it at the end. He said it was just for fresh legs. And I think we have to remember that Idrissa Gueye is getting on for 36 now. And Everton rely on him heavily. But the drop-off then, the lack of control or the loss of control, get me words mixed up, was just insane, really. And Everton just about made it through to the end. But obviously that's what they're looking to do in the final hours of the transfer window.
We will get onto transfers and the back line, because I think there's a few of the conundrums that Moyes is facing. But just on Grealish again, is it almost a relief, do you think, to see what he's coming undone? Because obviously I was all for Jack Grealish joining Everton, but there was questions around, is he washed up? Is he finished? Is he ever going to be able to get back to that same level he was at Aston Villa? Or, as it's kind of the decline at Man City took its toll, and, he's become a bit of a spent force.
Yeah.
Is it almost relief that, we are watching Jack Grealish getting back towards the levels we saw at Aston Villa and playing with that bit of freedom, that enjoyment, and above all, the smile on his face?
Yeah, well, it's only been a few games so far, and I think with it being alone and, the contribution to his wage is substantial, but in the grand scheme of this transfer window, £12 million, which is what the deal will roughly cost Everton for the full year, really isn't that much money. And really, I'm looking around this now and wrote it into my match report, I think all of a sudden there are probably a lot of clubs across Europe that are looking at what he's done in those first few games and thinking, why don't we explore this further? And I think what was really obvious against Wolves is in those games against sides that might be either the bottom end of the table or mid-table, those sides that have kind of struggled a little bit to put away in games over recent years. He can be a difference maker. He was a difference maker the other day, and he's the type of player that those clubs that maybe were hoping to finish above Everton this season, might not have. Like, you look at Wolves. Wolves had Cunha last year. They didn't have anything like a Grealish or a Cunha this time round. And you look at some of the other sides, like your West Hams and your newly promoted sides, your Fulhams that have struggled to kind of bring players in this summer. You just look at that and you think that he's leveled up this Everton side, and the potential for what they can achieve is so much higher now. The ceiling is so much higher that it's not daft to get excited. I don't think. Even Aston Villa now, you look at them, it looks like they're kind of, from an attacking point of view, it looks like they're going to take a bit of a gamble on Jadon Sancho. That's going to cost them twice as much money, possibly as what Grealish has cost Everton. And you look at how they struggled at the start of the season, you think, why didn't they look into this any further? Like, he has got some magic in him. But obviously, it's only been a couple of weeks, hasn't it? It's only been a couple of games, and one of the big tests will be how much of the season he can do this for. But he didn't make it into the England squad this time round, but I think whilst I think that the international breaks are a bad thing, and I don't like the way that we get them loaded up at the start of the season, I think the fact that Grealish had this positive start going to the first international break, and we'll have another international break at the start of October to work towards, I think he'll know, and I think that Thomas Tuchel's basically told him if he's playing first team football, he wants him in and around the squad. He'll know if he can carry on that form across the next month, he'll probably be in and around that squad. And that's obviously his goal at the end of the season. That's why he wants to be playing first team football. So you have this nice little useful narrative where Grealish and Everton's interests align. Like, it works for them both for him to be playing well, and that hunger should still be there. So, you look at those next 4 games, it's an interesting, 4 Premier League games. It's really interesting that period because they're all in Liverpool, aren't they? So it's Villa at home, Liverpool away, and I think Palace and West Ham at home. It's something along those lines. Obviously, got Wolves away in the cup, but so there's no miles in the legs from a travelling perspective or anything like that either. 3 games at home, dead useful. So there's no reason why it shouldn't drop off now. And maybe even the fact that Grealish has got a little fortnight now to have a bit of a break after, because he didn't really have a proper pre-season. He didn't play many games last season. Maybe that's useful as well.
Obviously, we've spoke globally about how good the attacking forward line was. I think it's safe to say that some Blues have concerns when it comes to the back line and the way in which Everton are offering up chances to the opposition, and as we saw on Saturday, goals. One of the big talking points I thought online after the game on Saturday was around, obviously, when Jared Branthwaite is back fit. Naturally, I think we would all think that he would slot back in the heart of Everton's defence alongside James Tarkowski. But Michael Keane, again, I thought on Saturday was better than his centre-back partner, and there are now concerns around Tarkowski and he's just up on Mikalenko in terms of the defensive frailties.
Yeah, I mean, Everton were very bad against Leeds. There was a bad day at the office, and the squad was smaller than ideal, and it still may well be going once deadline days pass. But I do think it's important not to read too much into Leeds, because I think that if Mykolenko or Branthwaite is fit and able to play left back in that game, or even maybe not Asnu, because he does look a little bit raw. But if one of those was able to do that, and then Garner's in midfield ahead of Timur Obernan, I do think that makes a significant difference to Everton. And I think that game, probably bearing in mind how tight it ended up being in the end, I think it's a different game if you have those two players in the favourite position. I think that, again, it was an issue against Brighton, but Tarkowski and Mykolenko being big parts of one of the best defences in the league for 2 seasons in a row. So I think that if you can get if you can get everything else right around them, just get players playing in their positions, or players playing in their positions, and with O'Brien at right back, then I don't think there's anything really to be too concerned about. And even on Saturday, obviously Mykolenko came back in. In general, play Wolves didn't really cause Everton any problems. It was only those individual mistakes that you hope are just one-offs or can be ironed out. Tarkowski's had a difficult start to the season. I do think it's harder for him when he's playing alongside Michael Keane than it is Jared Branthwaite. I think he has more to do, and perhaps has to be a little bit more aggressive than he'd like to be. And he's also come off the summer where he's been injured as well, so you can't rule him out. You'll write him off too early. But I think it's definitely fair to say that Michael Keane's been the best of the defenders across the start of the season so far. Made a couple of big interventions at the weekend, and also I think he played a role in the second goal. One of the goals he played a role in because he was pushing really high up the pitch and won a tackle. And we've seen him do that a couple of times. I mean, we saw him do it against Mansfield, and his tackle set Beto through on goal, and Beto should have done better in that match as well. So I think he's having a good start to the season. But I'm not worried about the defence, really, just because I think that if you're in a situation where you're able to play James Garner in central midfield alongside Idrissa Gueye, and say, for instance, they get another centre midfield like we're expecting them to do today, then all of a sudden, actually, I think Everton are relatively stable. I think the big improvement for me, really, that I hope Everton were able to do by the end of this season, although it's going to be tough, because they need a specialist right back to be able to do this, is to be able to move Jacob Bryan into the middle. I mean, if you look at that side now, because obviously, Tarkowski's now in the last year of his contract as well, which is another thing that needs to be looked at. But when you look at that side now, if you were to put O'Brien and a fit Branthwaite and O'Brien at centre back, and just even if it's just a bang average right back, but a right back nonetheless, that side starts to get really exciting then, doesn't it? When you think that how commanding those two can be in their pace at the back, it almost allows the whole team to push up a lot higher as well. Then rather than, so you don't end up with these big gaps between defence and attack because they've got the pace to get back. Mykolenko, I think that we know has a ceiling, but I think he can. As bad as the mistake was the other day, he has been part of that excellent defence. From a defensive unit, I think that Everton should be okay. I think Moyes would like to another body in there today if he can get it. And that's less because of the quality of the personnel, more because of those injuries. I think Mykolenko's had a number of injuries now over the past 14, 15 months. Branthwaite has had a couple as well. And obviously Tarkowski's come off the back of a difficult summer, and that's before you get to the issues at right back with Coleman and Nathan Patterson and their struggles to stay fit for a long time. So I think with all those in mind, I think ideally Moyes would get a specialist right back in, and then he's got Jacob Bryan that can cover in the middle. But I think the backup would be, if they could achieve it today, would be if you hold your hands and you go, okay, O'Brien's going to play at right back. Well, then you then lose that cover from centre back. And I mean, if they could get a left-sided centre back that could cover Branthwaite and Mykolenko if needed, then I think that'd be perfect.
Obviously, one player you just touched on there, James Garner. For me, I think he's been a bit of an unsung hero to start this season. I thought he'd done really well at Leeds on the opening night, playing left back, obviously completely out of position. He's impressed in the middle of the pitch, and he was instrumental again on Saturday in a lot of what was good about Everton. He's just a player who seems to go out of his business and puts in 7, 8 out of 10 performances every week.
Well, yeah, I mean, my criticism of him up until now in Devonshire would be that he didn't do that, and actually he's more often a 6 out of 10. That he gets in there and he works hard, but doesn't really affect the game. Like, he's just a body kind of churning away. I think he had a really good finish to pre-season. Against Manchester United, he was very good. And I thought he was all right against Roma as well. At Leeds, I didn't think he was. I mean, he was out of position, so that was hard for him. But I still think that was probably the wrong decision to play him there against Leeds. But he did all right against Brighton. Obviously, Brighton had chances in that game, and it could have been a very different alternative outcome. But he did get the goal. Back in his normal position at the weekend, I thought he was very good. I did think he was genuinely very good at the weekend, and that's good as well because Everton need to be able to not just rely on Idrissa Gueye in the middle, and if Garner can step up, and hopefully he'll now have some competition to force him to step up as well. Again, he's in last year of his contract, so he's got something to kind of play for. And hopefully a new addition in the middle. Let's say we're expecting Merlin Rohl to get over the line. Whether he takes Garner's place or not, I'm not sure. But it should drive up standards because there should finally be competition in the middle of that pitch, which I don't think there really is at the moment. So
we will come on to the transfer window and deadline day shortly.
Keeping us waiting. What else is there to talk about?
And I just want to talk about, because obviously one man who's been linked to a move away this summer was Beto.
Oh, right, yeah.
In terms of, his future, and obviously hands his first start on Saturday. Gets a goal. Some interesting comments I thought by David Moyes in his press conference last week around, the stuff and how he feels he's getting the best out of him and the best way to get a reaction from him. We certainly got a reaction from him on Saturday because he goes and gets a goal.
Well, he started against Leeds, didn't he? And I think, well, I just think that a lot of people have been looking at forwards, and with Chimichi expected to leave the club, there has been a bit of a clamour around can Everton get a third striker in. I don't think they need one. Which might be a controversial take, but they're only going to be playing with one striker for most of the season. And Moyes does think that Ndiaye can play up top as well if needs be. I think that for the amount of money that it would take to buy something that you can have faith in, I don't think Everton quite want to spend that money on someone there at this present moment in time. I think Beto and Barry, I was impressed with Barry against Brighton. I like the look of him. And then, I think Beto is good enough for what we're going to do, because I think that there'll be far less on him to make the most of bad situations this season. I think he'll have a lot more support, a lot more creativity around him. The thing I like about Beto is he just causes problems for defences. They just don't know how to deal with them. Sometimes that's easier. Sometimes he's more effective against the better sides because of that. They don't know how to deal with them. You look at the carnage he caused against Liverpool in both games last season. He can do that. I mean, maybe this is a little bit unkind, but you get the impression that sometimes he doesn't know what he's going to do next. So how can a defender then deal with that? But it creates space, it creates trouble, which then allows your likes of your Grealishes and your Keenan Dewsbury Halls and your Ndiayes and hopefully your Diblins then take advantage. So, we spoke to David Moyes on Friday ahead of the season about potential lack of firepower. He said he had absolute faith in those two players. He said that a lot of people, he's been critical a little bit, has asked a few questions in public of Beto over the summer. But that was more an attempt to try and spur him on into some action, trying to get some more productivity out of him. In the end, it probably turns out that actually what he needed was love rather than questions, because he comes out on Friday and obviously our report saying that he's got faith in him and that he thinks he's a good player. He's an unbelievable lad who works hard and keeps trying to get better. Well, he then starts him and he gets a goal and doesn't get the assist for the Ndiaye goal, but he plays a big role in it. So, I think that I don't think it's a priority area for Everton to strengthen. I think Moyes often makes reference to the fact he got 8 Premier League goals last season, so 7 of them were under David Moyes. That was basically only from half a season's worth of starts. So it's if you can, and that's for a relegation fighting team that had no creativity in it. So if you start him for a season and put some genuine ballers around him and take the pressure off every effort needing to go in because you're only going to get one a game, then all of a sudden it's not unrealistic to think that double figures is there for him or Barry or both if they can get on a run.
Merlin Rohl, is that how you pronounce it?
Merlin Rohl.
Yeah. Everton's what looks to be deadline day signing.
Yep, yeah.
A name that has emerged this morning. I think he was linked earlier on in the window. A midfield reinforcement. Yeah,
well, Everton have liked him for some time, and as we speak now, I think he might actually be undergoing his medical on Merseyside. So. Look, for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, Moyes' attention has really been on his defence with those injuries and on central midfield. He started the summer worried about the central midfield, and it's one of the reasons why I think the talks over Idrissa Gueye took so long before he finally signed the contract, was because Moyes was a little bit concerned about his age, his wear and tear, and how much he had left in him. Obviously, he was Everton's best player last season, and he's still their best midfielder now, but Moyes' concern is, one, you need to protect him a little bit. Say brought him off for 15 minutes to go in the game that was in the balance the other day. Because he's obviously getting older, he needs a bit of freshness in his legs. But not only that, I mean, we're probably going to lose him for a month or so because of the Africa Cup of Nations later on this summer. And you already need to start really building a succession plan because he isn't going to be around forever for what's going to come next. So centre midfield became a big issue. It was a big issue before the weekend, but let's say the drop-off when Gay came off really highlighted just how much I think that area needed addressing. Last week, he was open to try and get Thomas Souček. There was genuine interest there, obviously reunite with him. I mean, Souček played yesterday as West Ham got a surprise win at Nottingham Forest. So I think they've been a little bit dissuaded from that. I think Merlin Rohl's come in as the alternative, 23-year-old, almost 50 games in the Bundesliga for Freiburg. I think he can get a deal over the line, 6'3", so he's strong, physical presence. I think one of the things that I like about Rohl is his ability to carry the ball. He can pick the ball up in deep and carry it 20 yards forward, which is something that Everton don't really have in the side, have had for a while. That ability to kind of relieve pressure from the edge of the area and not be one of the attacking players that's doing it. So, that would be a real positive. It's something I think Timo Robenham can do that, but I think he's still a little bit immature and a bit indisciplined in other areas of his game for Everton to really be able to trust him he has started 2 games this season, but I think really he needs to be on the bench and coming in to with the pressure off to help maybe develop, because we're not expecting him to depart on loan this today, whereas I think a couple of weeks ago that might have been if Everton could have got reinforcements in earlier. So, yeah, I think Rohl can play across most of the positions in centre midfield. Tends to play attacking midfield, but he's done a fair bit in centre midfield. I think he's got a degree of footballing intelligence, and when you look at what Everton do at the minute, they don't have many options in the middle. Obviously, Decore went. You've got Idrissa Gueye, James Garner, and then there's a bit of a drop-off to the inexperience of Harrison Armstrong and Timo Robenham. They desperately needed a third there, I think, and hopefully Merlin Rohl can provide that. And not sure if it'll initially be on a permanent or a loan with an option or obligation to buy. There will be an opportunity for him to make it permanent at some stage if it's not now. But again, he will be another useful body. He'll be a ninth summer signing. He'll improve the side. He'll improve Moyes' options. And he's another kind of younger player that can that kind of 21, 22, 23 age bracket that we've seen a few signings this season, that can grow with the team as well. So if they can get that over the line today, I think that'd be a really good piece of business.
You say they signed number 9, putting you on the spot. Do you think we'll have a signed number 10 deal sheet going in 5 to 7 tonight?
Well, I wouldn't be that surprised if a deal sheet went in for Merlin Rohl, to be honest. So they tend to, we have been in that territory for the last 2 windows, haven't we, with Breuer and Alcaraz. I think if they can find someone to get it, I think if there was an opportunity to sign a right back that Moyes was happy with right now, whether on a permanent or a loan, then I think he would. Similarly, if he doesn't think he can get a right back, I wouldn't be that surprised to see him get a centre back to then, cover the fact that he's going to lose Jake O'Brien to the right for most of the season, or certainly the first half of the season. I do think that if they can get Rohl through the door, then they'll probably let Harrison Armstrong leave on loan. Moyes spoke to Moyes at length about this over the weekend. He likes Armstrong. There's no doubt that he sees a player of real potential there. But what he doesn't, he's trying to walk a fine line where, at the moment, he doesn't have the numbers to be able to allow him to leave because he thinks he can do a job if needed in the Premier League. But I think his preference right now is to not hamper his development, to allow him to go out and get first team football in the Championship again. Because obviously he's still only 18. The way that Moyes sees it, I think, is that I think for Moyes to be able to take it, for Harrison Armstrong to take a step up with Moyes, I think right now probably needs to be in and around England's under 21s. At the moment, he's in England under 19s, and he's only 18. He's only a kid. So I think whilst obviously Moyes would like to see him develop, he doesn't want to rush it. I think that's key, really. I think he's seen there have been some really good England under 21s, the likes of kind of Tyler Morton and a few others who have still struggled to kind of make it in the Premier League and get proper football in the Premier League, and they've had to go out elsewhere to try and find it. And Armstrong isn't yet at that level yet, so I think he doesn't want to rush him. He doesn't want to put him into the furnace too quickly. So it could well be that we see another loan. Preston are the favourites to sign him if Everton are willing to sanction that. They're at the front of a long list of teams. How long that'll be, I'm not sure, but I think Moyes will very much want to keep the option to bring him back in January when the Africa Cup of Nations comes along, just in case he needs a bit of he needs another figure in centre midfield. Then the other two to think about today really are one, Nathan Patterson, looks like he's probably going to stay. Deal to take him on loan to Sevilla looks like it's fallen through. Sevilla were trying to get rid of their Napoli were trying to sign their right back Juan Lu from Sevilla. That looks like it's fallen through, and the knock-on effect is probably Patterson. And I think that Everton won't sanction another move for Patterson to go on loan unless something came in that was more lucrative than they were expecting, or perhaps they could get a right back over the line. Then I think he'll probably stay with Everton. And the other one's Yusuf Chimiti, who, to all intents and purposes, looks like he's probably moving now on a permanent move, £8 million rising to 10 to Rangers.
Just on Chimiti here, surprised Everton are letting him go on a permanent basis? Because obviously I think people initially thought it'd be a loan and might come back after the season, but it looks like he's going to leave Everton for good.
No, I don't think so. I think he's had a difficult time at Everton. I think, to be honest, he's a product of the last recruitment regime, and obviously it's that recruitment regime and Kevin Fowler and Dan Purley that are now at Rangers that are going to be trying to take him north of the border and give him another chance. And I always thought Chimiti was a strange signing at the time. He felt like I think there is a player in there. We've seen too few glimpses of it, unfortunately, largely because of injury or because of the pressure of the situation that Everton have been under in recent years. I think there is a genuinely intelligent footballer in there that could develop into something quite exciting. I just don't think it's going to be Everton. And I think the decision to sign Tieno Barry, who Moyes thinks Tieno Barry's raw, and he's 22, led the line for a side that qualified and scored 11 goals for a side in La Liga that qualified for Europe last season. If he thinks he's raw, then obviously Chimiti's younger and played. He hasn't even scored a senior goal for Everton. So it was almost the type of signing that was type of signing that Everton might. It was almost like they were trying to run before they could walk. I think for what limited money they had at the time, and the needs in the squad that they had at the time, to spend the chunk of money on a player that you would hope could be able to develop, it was probably a luxury that Everton couldn't afford at the time. It hasn't worked out. It's a shame. I think he'll leave for Scotland with everyone's best wishes. But I think salvaging some money from that deal, bearing in mind his injury record over the last few years, I say £8 million for a player who hasn't scored a senior goal for Everton is probably pretty useful right now.
Before we finish, obviously we won't be speaking tonight when the window shuts at 7 o'clock. But as we sit here now, say Everton get rolled through the door, he'd be signing number 9 of the summer. What will be your thoughts as the window shuts as a whole?
Yeah, I think it'd be really positive, and I think that you kind of almost needed to get to the end of it to place a verdict on it. Angus Kinnear always said judge the club on where it is at September the 2nd. And I think I wrote in column a week or so ago, maybe a week and a half ago now, that I thought that Everton needed to get 2 of 3 positions. They needed a right winger, a right back, and a centre midfield. If they could get 2, then I thought the window could be judged as a success, and it looks like they're probably just about going to get there. I do think there's, it's frustrating that if they're unable to sign a right back, that's frustrating, and I think they could probably do with another right winger, just as backup and support to Tyler Diblin. But I do think it's clear now when you look at these things. Obviously, Moyes believes that Ndai can play on the right. And whilst I would have questioned that, I mean, he's got 2 goals from there already this season. And I think Moyes is also quite content with O'Brien on the right, and we know that he can do a good enough job on there. I think with the right back situation, they genuinely thought they were going to get Kenny Tete. Now, not being able to move on from that in 2 months is frustrating. But I mean, if you were to then add if you were to get Roll over the line and you'd added Tete in 2 months ago, obviously you'd be looking at starting 11. You genuinely would be thinking that a top 10 finish was almost to be expected rather than to be hoped for. They haven't quite done that, so it's still frustrating that there's still a few square pegs in round holes. Especially if Asnu's a little bit further. If Asnu can't be trusted, obviously he wasn't fit at the start of the season to replace Mikolenko, but there were concerning signs just about quite where he is against Roma. If he's not quite there to start, to be proper left back cover for Mikolenko, then I think they're a little bit limited. I still wouldn't mind another centre midfielder as well. But I think that when you look at the scale of the job that they had to do this summer, I think that there's no doubt whatsoever that the quality that Moyes has at his disposal is far higher than it was last season. depth is still an issue, but there's only so much they can do. You throw in the fact that they managed to convince Jared Brantwaite to tie him down to a serious long-term contract. I think you have to look at the summer as a really positive one, and the fact that they've managed to. It's not being clever after the fact, but the transition to Hill Dickinson was always something that worried Moyes. Always something that's going to be difficult, and there may be difficult times ahead. I've mentioned 3 home games coming up in the next 4. That might not be a great thing. We'll have to wait and see how it goes because the pressure can build if they don't get results. But to have won against Brighton and then got the win against Mansfield, supplemented that with the win against Wolves, it feels like there's a feel-good factor. It feels like there's a bit of momentum. Look at the Premier League table, having a 5th. Like it's just mad, and it's not just that they're 5th; it's the way they've got there and like the verve and the vibrancy they're playing with going forward. Like there is a way. It's not that unrealistic that Everton finished 13th again this season, and when they finished last season, would have finished the season before without the points deductions. But if that was to be the case, it feels like it's going to be a very different way of getting there this season. It's not going to be 6 months of relegation battle and the surge at the end. It's going to be a roller coaster of fun where maybe they fade at the end because they haven't got the squad depth. But I think that there's going to be some very, very entertaining and enjoyable afternoons this season with that group of players. I think there'll be times when we pull our hair out, and I think Wolves was very, very nearly one of them. Leeds has already been one of them. There will be times when that side is going to infuriate. I think the squad needs to mature quite a lot. That game management, I still don't think it's quite got it. But this does feel like a real summer of progress now that we're kind of getting to the end of it, and that should play out on the pitch, I think, over the coming months.
We will, of course, bring you all the latest on Liverpool Echo's site between now and tonight's 7 p.m. deadline, as well as bring you all the best reaction and analysis to what has been, I think I say, an eventful window, Joe.
Yeah, it has.
an eventful window. And thanks to the fact that our podcast host, stroke producer, Ian Kroll, returns from his holiday tomorrow, Tuesday, we will be back to normal with a full week of shows and schedule as we reflect on a transfer window and Everton starts the season. But for today, I've been Conor O'Neill, your host, joined by Joe Thomas. Thank you for listening to the Road Blue Podcast.